the idea is um, their meals that they're currently eating, what they can do to like polish them up, make them all shiny, make them all like ooh, excitable for the new year to start it. Um, and I think I want to cover some of the fears that people have. Talking from like my experience, when I came to plant based, I wasn't thinking plant based. I was thinking like my child's driving me absolutely insane and I don't know what to do. And then I started getting suggestions and different things I could switch out and substitute. And I was like, this is helping. This is not drowning us. This is doing really well. Like, this is what we want. And so, yeah, I think some of my worries were, well, what do I do if I need to eat out? We're so far away from everything. How do I encourage them to eat before we go places? And that has turned into such a fantastic, like, different way of viewing it. Like our lifestyle has switched from we're going out to eat out, like we're purposely going out of the house to eat fast food, to there's like fast food restaurants and grocery stores. If you were to like put them side by side, there's probably every time you see a fast food store, you see a grocery store. And so I'm like, why would we not just go into the grocery store and pick up apples or pick up veggie? Like there's stuff that my kids really enjoy eating now that we can put into the cart if we haven't packed anything. So sometimes it is pre-packing things. And I got them these fancy little lunch pails with lids and they open up and they have like all these little treats in sections, like a section for seeds and a section for like carrots and then a little thing for dip. And like, and they love, Mom, did you pack my lunch thing? Like my it's bento box and it just opens and they're hard. And so they love like sitting back there and munching on all their little like snacks. It's like a treasure chest that they don't know what's in it. So they're excited to have these little like go lunch pail things. So we've changed from like really looking at, oh, we're just eating because we need to eat. Let's get out of the house and we need to eat, to like this is intentional. Like we want to pack it full of things that are going to be good memories and going to be fun for you and that are easy for me because I need to grab things and go. And when you come home, I need you to be fed and going to bed. And so that really I think my initial was like, this isn't doable. It's not doable because how do I feed them and get them home and then put them to bed? Um, and then it was just realizing like it's the pre-planning. Oh, yeah.
That's huge. What
Yeah.
what amazing shifts. They're gigantic in the effect, and yet that little pre-planning saves you from so much frustration later,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely. Because what we were finding was we I wasn't monitoring what people were eating. And it was burning through all of my energy trying to parent them that I couldn't actually get to the kitchen to prepare anything. So it was like the transition, the first step was like, I can't do anything because I'm like one to one holding this kid because he's a beast. Like he's not safe to be left with anybody like it without one to one supervision within arm's reach. And I'm like, how do I stay in the kitchen to do things? And I'm like, wait a second, it's like fall. There's tons of apples. Even if I like just feed him peppers from the garden and apples, we can at least like do watermelons or do something. And he's like curious about these new foods. So he's like wanting to try them. Even if he doesn't like them, he's curious about it and is like, can you give it to me? Like it's like a new treat they've never had. So this is like I was lucky in the sense that he wanted to try these new things. And so that clicked for me too. Like the reason my child isn't eating healthy or as healthy as he could be is because I don't give him those options. And so it's not that he's an unhealthy eater or not as healthy as he could be. And it's my job to provide those things and I'm not. And he's curious and he's wanting to explore them. And I'm actually not living to my fulfillment and fulfilling all of my pieces if I'm not at least offering what he's asking for, what he's curious about. And so it was neat to have that mindset shift as well of like, oh, he's hungry, so just give him something. There's crackers on the table. Like whatever was easiest and fastest was what we did. But then realizing I don't have to do that. I can make something else as accessible to him. It just takes a little bit of like planning it differently. And so if that's like cutting up a watermelon and putting it in the fridge so that it's accessible, that when I'm like, oh, you want a snack? Here's a handful of watermelon, or like here's some broccoli pieces. Like it's that, and I think you talked about that, the buffet style in your fridge where you can pull out those little drawers or containers and be like, oh, okay, what can we put on your plate? And he's like excited about the different dips and crunchiness and colors and stuff. So that was another shift that I didn't think about or think that I even should be looking at. Like it just, these things naturally occurred. Mhm.
Wow. And how was it for some of the other family members to see more of these foods come out?
It was definitely mixed reviews. Um, and part of that was because like I felt like we were a bit thrown in. So once I discovered, okay, the 3-year-old really needs to have like garden fresh fruit and veggies and be like out of store bought sauces and things like that. Once I discovered that, I started making more things so that it was accessible. The other family members, they didn't need to make the switches because they didn't see the value in it for themselves yet. And so it didn't directly impact them. The part that impacted them came later when I had more time to spend with them because I wasn't one to one
Wow.
holding the kid anymore. Right. And they noticed this kid wasn't attacking them anymore. So they were getting more joy out of things. They could relax a little bit. And so they would then became more encouraging, like, yeah, let's keep these changes because we like it. And they liked coming and um, like making different things in the kitchen. Like when I cut up some of the veggies, they liked the job of like picking them up and putting them in the containers. And so they started to engage in a new way rather than where I'm busy all the time. I don't know, fend for yourselves. It became more intentional. And I think they would say that they feel like they get more time. Now, the meals, they don't necessarily always eat the meals. They especially now that it's a kind of a fine line because they 3 of them are on the spectrum, and so it wouldn't matter. They just don't like change. So it's not necessarily that these items are bad. It's in their head. They perceive it as a rigidity that they have is this time on this day, this food should taste like this. It should always taste the way I had it when I first had it, and that's the proper way. So any kind of change for them, and it's not just food, it's life in general, any changes outside of a routine are really difficult. So for me, I just respected that. My husband does a lot of the prep and meal stuff for those that don't like change. He's one of them. And so he doesn't mind doing those things. Mhm.
What's interesting to me is the idea that they don't like change, but little by little, as they're introduced to these things and they're just there,
Mhm.
say on the table next to what they're used to or included with, that those become the new
Yeah.
things that they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
you know like
Absolutely.
an example for me with my youngest, he was 4 when we started eating plant-based. All of a sudden, total change. And he went from chicken nuggets on the way into town, kind of like, oh, I don't know what else here, and he went from that to 100% whole food plant-based overnight. And we realized that fruit is the way in for children. It's
Yes.
it's just built into them. They love the sweetness. It's sweet. It's got the fiber, the water, the
Mm,
phytonutrients, it's got everything that you know, that we need, and they love it. So it's,
mhm.
if you slice it up in advance, then you're ready for it. But
Absolutely.
that switch was challenging. And the first plant-based milk that we tried We actually had gone from raw milk to rice milk. So like we
Oh.
at the time I was trying to eat healthy. So I was moving through my transition from standard American diet to, okay, we're going to upgrade everything. So it was sort of the better cuts of meat, the better chickens, the better, organic this and grass fed that, that kind of idea. And our milk we were getting raw milk from a local farm, and it was like creamy and amazing. I thought it was the best thing ever. And then when I started to see the benefits of whole food plant-based and how it could affect our whole family and our longevity for life, I gave it a shot, hardcore. And that little guy struggled. He was crying at his cereal because it had rice milk. And then a couple of months later, I switched us. I finally was able to find another type of milk, and we tried almond milk. So I was making my own almond milk, and he was very unhappy because it was a switch. And then once he switched over, he was crying then to give up his rice milk. And it was like, wait, this is interesting. That every time we change, there's a huge resistance. This is what I'm used to. But, I've learned since then that taste buds change, and it takes about 2 weeks of eating a particular food before the taste buds start to go, okay, I feel good from that. That's going to get a yes, So it can feel good from junk food because you'll get the dopamine hit, and that'll be like, oh yeah, we want that. Right. But if it's a subtle dopamine hit from a healthy food, and the whole body actually goes, yes, 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 more of that. I like that. It makes me feel good. That's another way that the body will say, yes, let's have more of that. So the taste buds will start to say, when we taste that, we're gonna light up. We're gonna make that a yes.
Oh, that is so neat to like go into the science of some of that stuff. Because when my youngest, well, I guess the 3-year-old, when he started to make those changes, I became on board with him just to role model it with him, right? And so I didn't think ever, not even a million years, it did it cross my mind, because I was on the American diet where, you eat when you're hungry, whatever you want, whenever you want, how much you want, because it's there, accessible and available. You just go find something that you crave right now and eat it till you don't feel hungry anymore. Like that was my mindset. Luckily, my body type, I didn't gain a whole ton of weight. Like my metabolism and it kept up, and I didn't end up with like different symptoms that I could have ended up with. Now looking at that, I'm like, wow, like the shift in like what my like the trajectory I was heading while I was on that, like it's mind blowing. I'm like, I cannot believe, like, phew, I dodged a bullet is the feeling that I get, because I'm like, I ate the sugars and the fried stuff and the gravies that were thick and stuff, and like it just didn't ever dawn to me that I should look at what I was eating, because I'm sick. I'm not overweight. Why would I look at anything? So when my 3-year-old needed to eat differently, I also ate differently with him to role model that. Then I started to notice the most fascinating things. My stomach always gurgled. And that was just who I was. I had a gurgly digestive system. I would sit down at night and we would my husband and I, we would kind of chuckle and we'd be like, gurgle, gurgle. Like that's just how it does things. And like, when I moved to plant-based, I realized, hey, my stomach's really quiet. Like when we would lay down in bed at night, we didn't hear that gurgle. And so I remember saying to my husband, like, have you noticed that my stomach is like not making noise anymore? He's like, yeah, I was going to mention that to you. Like, what's with that? Like, it doesn't even feel normal anymore because we're used to that as our background noise. And so, like, that was one of the big things that I had noticed right off the beginning, The other thing that I noticed, and like keeping in mind, I didn't go in thinking I'm going to eat differently so I can notice some things. I didn't go in with that mindset at all. I just went in thinking I am healthy. There's nothing like the doctor has flagged for me. All is good. And so when these health related types of things started coming up, I was like, wow. So one of those things was I had 4 babies. I had diastasis recti, which is the separation of your stomach muscles. And so I always assumed that I was going to look a little bit pregnant or a little bit like a mum pouch going on. And I just thought, I don't really care. I have 4 beautiful children, whatever. It's irrelevant at this stage. It is what it is. And then I started to notice, wait a second, I don't have that anymore. That like stomach bloating bottom portion of the, hey, you're a mom, you must have some beautiful children, that has gone away. And remember looking in the mirror going, is it just me or is it actually gone? And I like put on some of the clothes that I had put away because I'm like, I will never be able to wear these. And I put them on and I was like, I actually don't look pregnant in this. Like this whole bump in my stomach is not there. And so like I was curious about that. And then I started getting into some of the Facebook groups and realizing, right, that bloating is what it was actually is gone because of the changes that I've made. And I only thought that surgery was the option because this is like, separation of your muscles and they just don't come back together tight and you end up with a bit of a sag. And that wasn't the case. And so um, it's funny because then I went back to, we had a movie night. And so I like, oh, it's my birthday. I pulled out the pop and the popcorn with the butter all over it. And we're in the movie theater. And the next day, guess what was back? My bump, right? Overnight bump. And I'm like, at least now I know and feel like I've kind of tried and tested some of this stuff. The other thing that was interesting to me was I really tried to look at making things, taking and ingesting things that my body recognized. So if I was using sugar, it was like maple syrup, or it was dates. I was sweetening with the natural plant-based sweeteners. And so one day, it was late in the evening, I'm like, I really want to have a bowl of cereal. And so I'm like, oh, Quaker oats, that's healthy. I didn't even bother to look at the label because I'm like, Quaker oats is oats and oats are healthy. And so I poured a big old bowl of Quaker oat cereal, the big chunks and like the raisins in there. I'm like, this is going to be so good. And coconut sprinkled all in it. It's so good. So I like got I had my plant-based milk. I ate it up. And the next morning I was like, oh, why does my body feel so stiff? And it's burning. This is such a bizarre feeling for me. And then I was like, wait, this is how it always felt. And now I'm realizing that it's usually gone, but it's here today. Like, what is that? And then I'm like, I wonder if it has anything to do with the foods I ate. I'm like, what did I eat or introduce that was different? So I went back to that Quaker oat and read the box. And it's something like 32% sugar. And I was like, what? I was mind blown. I was like, that's not what I had wanted. That's not in line with like what I'm used to. This is like a whole ton of sugar in here. And it's not like it is the refined white processed sugar. And I'm like, how can the makers, coin this as a healthy cereal when it's so high in processed sugar? I'm like, this is for me not healthy because my body responded in a way that was like, oh, what are you doing? Everything kind of like flared up. And I was like, wow, like I guess I didn't even realize that my body had gone through changes and I felt better until I did something my old way and realized, wow, the difference. I guess I have made changes that made me feel better. Like, wow, I did. So I guess that for me, those two things were really eye-opening.
At this point, how long has it been since you've been eating this way?
I started probably So this is my third full month that I've gone through. Because it's yeah, we just went through the 3 months, initially just starting with my 3-year-old and then just introducing more. And I remember when you had made some, I told you what we were eating, and you were like, that's like thriving, like that's surviving. And what we want to do is maybe look for thriving. And I was like, what? Fed is best. And I just want to get fed. Like, and so I remember like sitting down and eating a meal and thinking, I am never, ever, ever going to be able to give up meat. Like, I am always going to think a meal consists of protein, and that protein has to come from meat. And so it wasn't until you gently said, some of the information that I've gotten is out of that China study. And it's like a really cool thing. And you were giving me little nuggets along the way, and how to like balance that, the sugar levels in your body and not have the spikes and stuff. And I'm like, it's irrelevant. I don't care. I'm trying to survive and hold this kid. And then I'm started to realize, wait, it's working. Like the things that you're like, well, you could do this, this, and this. There's, what you're doing. There's a better option. There's best. And you can, substitute along the way. You don't have to make a full like dive and go. You can just transition slowly and do it at your own pace. And so I think knowing that I could transition slowly helped me get to where I was going faster, rather than pulling the plug and being like, now you have to go completely whole food, plant-based. If you add oil, like those were the tips that you were able to give me when you were talking about what happens when you add oil to foods. So maybe you could speak about that.
Oh, I think it's exciting. I get excited talking about that because it was such a surprise to me to read the studies about what oil does in your body, and actually fats in general. So when we ingest fats, but there's good fats. So, you put a whole lot of olive oil in your cooking or something. Well, actually it creates a physical oil slick in your bloodstream. And that's not helpful for insulin to do its job. So insulin needs to be able to escort sugar out of the bloodstream into the cells, particularly the muscle cells where it's going to be stored as glycogen. So you've got your energy ready to go. And that's where it can be metabolized and burned off. And instead, the sugar gets blocked. It can't get, into the cells. And therefore, the fats in the bloodstream are literally causing the beginnings of prediabetes. And if you've, say, got any kind of issues along the, with insulin resistance, the first thing you want to do is cut the fat in your diet. And you have to get a certain amount of fat, but it's amazing that fruits and vegetables come with the perfect amount of protein and fat. Unless we're talking nuts, seeds, and avocado. So if you do need more fats, you can't, say you're very, very thin and you've got to put on some weight and you are eating a whole bunch of whole food, plant-based meals, and you're still not gaining weight because you just can't get in enough food. You've got issues with, burning through, food too fast. Then yeah, you definitely want to go for the more high calorie nut, seeds, avocado. Little children have a higher fat content in their diet than when they're older. And sometimes teenagers and toddlers have a lot in common in behaviors, in what they're going through in life, reaching their next level. And it's true with their bodies changing so much. So during those times, sometimes they can't keep up with calories. And that's okay. In that case, yes, eat a lot of fruits, vegetables, grains, and beans. You can find, if you've got issues with wheat, wheat is just one of the many, many, starches and grains that you can have. So there are just so many alternatives. It's ridiculous. It's nothing to feel, limited by at all. It's just there are new foods that you get to try, which is really, really exciting. So if you can get the toddlers and teenagers, or someone who's very, very thin that needs to put on weight, or say you're in bodybuilding and you're trying to put on bulk muscles, men for instance, or I've got my children are now young men and they're into building muscle.
Mhm.
And their concern is, well, I need to make sure I get enough protein. And they're hearing things about that. And they're hearing things about, well, I need more fat. I just need to eat a ton more food, anything. Actually, to really help grow your muscles, yes, you do need more food overall, but percentage wise, you still want to keep it low fat, low sugar, and high in carbohydrates that are
Mhm.
full of vitamins and fiber, so that everything works well. And you don't want to put in, a whole bunch of oily foods, because that's going to start messing with your hormones. Even it's going to mess
Mhm.
with, insulin is one type of hormone we have. It's, our glands produce, an orchestra of hormones all the time. And it really needs a nice clear channel of our bloodstream to be able to get around and take care of business.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting because the image that I get, I think on a lot in analogies and things like that, but I always think like, even if you add like water in a cup and you add oil, that oil sits right on top of the oil. So if you're drinking, I always think if this is the nutrients, the water is the nutrients, and it's like preceded by that oil, like the nutrients can't get through. Like that's the visual I get when I'm like, oh, got a recipe and they're like, just fry it in some oil. And I'm like, I don't want to like fry it in, because I think of it as when I eat it, it'll separate. The oil will go first and then the nutrients can't go in. And I'm like, huh, but
That's
it's just me.
that's a cool analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking of it, I'm picturing inside the bloodstream and the cells saying, "Hey, gimme, gimme," and the oil just kind of covering the lock on the door there to the cells. It's just like getting in the way, and the insulin's going, I'm trying, the insulin's like the doorman, it comes to the cell, like escorts the sugar in, and it can't get through. And so you can actually not be getting a lot of your nutrients
Mhm.
because you've got oil passing through. And then
Right.
the oil, the easiest thing for the body to do with all the fats, which turn to oil once you're eating them, but at least it's less and slower if it's from a whole food. So it's better to have an avocado than avocado oil that's already
Mhm.
been processed. Um, so lost my train of thought when I switched over. Maybe
Yeah,
I'll
I think it's like incredible to think of like, okay, I could be eating all of these great nutritionally dense, wonderful, helpful, right on track with my goal, and then miss like a tidbit of information, because the piece that you just talked about with the oils is a pretty massive piece in being able to ingest and get those cells absorbing that nutrients dense stuff that you've really like spent a lot of time planning and intentionally eating towards, right? So like, and I think that's the value in working alongside you, is that you get those tidbits. You get those like, oh wait, that's a great recipe. I wonder if we could switch out this piece, or if we could substitute that piece because this, and the piece that you mentioned, right? Like around the oils. And if you, for me, if I had not known you and we had these conversations, I would have had no idea. I would have been like, salad, healthy, oily dressing, wonderful. Like I'm doing great, but still not having my nutrient levels go up and increase with inside my body. Right. So I
Well,
think when,
in that case, then I have another tip for that one is, um, the insulin is blocked by the oil from escorting sugar into the muscle cells. Okay. But here's a great way to have like a plant-based whole food oil dressing. You're not using oil, you're using, say you use nut seeds or avocado in your dressing. That's actually going to help the fat soluble nutrients get in to your body. But you don't want to have that at the same time as the other half of your foods should be. It should be more starch based on one side. I'm picturing a plate, starch based,
okay.
and the other side, fruits and vegetables that are not starch based. So anything that you would put in a salad that is low fat.
Mm-hmm.
And then separate than that, your diet would have just like, we're talking a teaspoon to a tablespoon of nut seeds or avocado in a day. So we're talking a little bit, but if you save that for the end of the day and eat a lot of food prior to that, unlimited if it's whole food plant-based.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep the oils out and no processed foods,
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But afterwards, if your final meal is a great big salad and then you've got a dressing where you've put a modest amount, we're still talking a small amount, but if you put those whole foods that are nut seeds or avocado into a blended dressing, that will
Mm-hmm.
help the nutrients, fat soluble nutrients, and it will be okay for the sugar balance because you've already had your carbohydrates earlier. And by carbohydrates, I'm talking sweet potatoes, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
There are about 50 starches or more, but 50 that you can search online, like what are whole food plant-based starches? And Dr. McDougall has a wonderful list. I put together a similar list and it's abundant. There is so much. You're trading, say, 2 to 3 typical meat-based things for 50 starches that replace the protein, the right amount of fat. That all has 10% fat in it naturally. The average whole food plant-based, fruits, vegetables, grains, and beans average about 10% of protein and 10% fat, which is ideal because the carbohydrates are what our brains use and it's what all of our muscle cells use. So, you want sugar, but which comes from, that's the glycogen, which comes from the carbohydrates, but it also comes in a perfect amount and packaged in a way that the fiber keeps it steady. And if you keep the fat low, that means the body will be able to take in the sugar out of the bloodstream and be able to use it for energy and for warmth. It actually it keeps you warm because your body will also burn the glycogen just to keep the body temperature good, homeostasis for that.
So cool. And like the piece for me when I first started working or thinking about changes, my go-to was I can't because I have sensitivities. I can't because I don't have time. I can't, like anything in life. When you're comfortable and enjoy doing what you're doing, your brain comes up with all these reasons why they shouldn't change or give up what they're doing. And so that information that you give, those tidbits, were key in like convincing my brain, like, wait a second, need to reevaluate here. You need to have a second look at this. And then working around some of the sensitivities I had. So I already was not eating cheese. So I was already pretty much lactose intolerant and knew that. I didn't have nuts in my diet because it caused massive migraines. Like instantly, I could pretty much hold them and then be like getting a migraine. I could smell them and it would just trigger one. Anything with like spices and curries, it was like a no go. And so I felt like I was already eating what I could eat. Like I was in the safe zone, and anything outside of that was going to just trigger like problems for me. And so working alongside you, I realized actually, if you blend seeds like pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds, and a lot of these recipes that call for nut this or nut that, you can put those seeds in and it tastes super similar to what some of those nuts are like, and substitute some of those things. Mm.
Yes. That's an exciting thing to know, that nuts and seeds are different in, it's like, yeah, nuts and seeds, it's just the name, right?
Mhm.
But some people that have difficulty, with nuts can have seeds. So,
Mm.
say you'll have sunflower butter, instead of peanut butter, for instance, even though peanuts are a little bit of an odd one. It's a
Mhm.
legume, really. Peanuts are a strange one, but the issues most people have, unless they have a specific allergy towards that actual nut, tends to be the mold that grows on peanuts, on the, you know, on the shells of them. And then, it gets made into the peanut butter, it's shelled, but, it's not like they can get rid of all the mold that's on the outside of it. So you end up, there is that issue sometimes. So I use peanut butter sparingly and I go for almond butter because it has less of that type of an issue. So that can be one problem with peanut butter. So if you can kind of monitor that.
Mhm.
So the good, better, best thing is,
Yes,
and I think that really helped you,
it
be
did.
able to go, wait, there is no guilt to continue eating the way I've been eating. We are, we are beings of light and love here. We get to be in these bodies and experience life here. And whatever we do is allowable. We get to do what we need to do to take care of our bodies. And, we have to eat something. So to add a layer of, oh, I'm doing something wrong, or this is a good
Mhm.
or bad food, is kind of missing the point. It's about nourishing yourself. And really, if you don't change your diet at all, good on you. You do you, like that is totally allowed and okay. You don't need to change to be worthy, or,
Yeah.
there's no guilt, no shame in not doing these things. And that once you have a ground level layer of understanding that this is good, I am taking
Mhm.
care of my family, I'm feeding myself, it is good. And then the better and best become more playful, from that basis of, I can, I have people even now, and I've been doing whole food plant-based for a very long time. And I still have people going, oh yeah, sorry, I know you can't have that. And I immediately say, oh, well, sure I can. I just prefer
Mhm.
something else. So, oh, hey, we're all having ice cream. Oh, sorry, you can't have that. Oh, yes, I can. I just prefer to have banana and ice cream. So I'm going to have that a little later. So right now I'll have this, but I'll have this gigantic,
Ah,
gigantic frozen banana, you know, blended ice cream later on, and
yeah.
I'll sprinkle some mulberries on it, and, and I'll have my treat.
That is so true. There's so many different substitutes that you don't necessarily have to look at it like well, you can't have that. There's so many things that, um, yeah, they're just different options. I remember going to a birthday party and the mom contacted me ahead of time and said, like, this is a plan. We're planning to have pizza and hot dogs. And like, is there anything that I need to know can go on or not on the pizza? And I was like, that's fine. Like, I don't know that my kiddos will eat it. And I didn't talk to her about the new goals that we had for the 3-year-old and keeping his behavior in line a little better. And what she told me was that they were going to have a piñata and they were going to break the piñata and they would have all these candies. And I knew immediately, like, the piñata was like really going to be a problem for us because I just pictured all these little kids grabbing candy out of there and my kid wasn't going to be able to. And so I was like immediately like, oh no, like, can he not go to the birthday? He's going to be left out. He's going to have all these feelings. And it's amazing how fast a 3-year-old can learn the cues of his own body. So he now comes to me and is like, can you check this? Can I have this? Has this got dye in it? Has this got stuff in it that is going to make me feel bad? Because he's learned that when he eats a certain way, it makes him feel one way. And when he eats a certain way, it makes him feel another way. So he just knows, I'll just get my mom to check and see if it's something that's going to be make me feel good or make me feel like icky. And so, and his brother has learned as well, like, you should probably ask mom about that one. And they've learned that they should probably ask mom, not dad. They'll say, I'll just wait till mom wakes up and then my mom can feed me. And so I liked your idea around looking at it as an extended version, almost like when you are the mom to a new baby, you nourish them and you give them your milk and you like kind of monitor what they're doing. And as they get to be a toddler, you monitor what they're eating and what's putting in their mouth and who's giving them what. But you just keep that like as the overarching piece of like, I am the mom and I will just kind of like educate them on what is going to be okay for them to kind of bring into their body and what changes they might feel behaviorally if they don't stay on track. Not to say that he always is on track. He might have the odd time where he eats something and we didn't know, or he got into there was a pop on a table. Somebody had come over and he got into that and he drank it and he started running laps in the house and he said, "Mama, I just can't stop running. I don't know. I just cannot stop." And I was like, you got into something, didn't you? Like I could tell right away. And I'm like, man. And so I love that you were able to come up with like those moments where I'm like, Lynda, I don't know what to do. Like we have a meal that's coming up or a party that's coming up or this is going to happen. Like, how do I avoid like him having feelings of like, oh, I can't be included in those things. And those suggestions that you had around, like you could either bring things for everybody, which is what we did. We ended up bringing like, we made our own cupcakes and we iced them. And then like I didn't know that even white things had dye. Like it's white, it's not dyed. It is white and it is dyed white. And so I was like, that was like mind blowing to me as well. And so we made our own icing. We iced our cupcakes. We bought the like sprinkles that, were dyed with different plants and fruits. And so we put the sprinkles on and we took them for everybody. And it was like super cool that he could present his friends with a treat that he is like potluck. Like, look at the treat I brought for everybody. So it made it his thing versus him not being able to participate in something, which was cool to see. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that, okay, life is more than, you know, walking a perfect line and eating the right foods and being in the right place and doing all the right things. Like it's so much more than that. It's a messy, zigzaggy thing. And the feeling of being left out is more
Mhm.
harmful, in my opinion, than
Absolutely.
whether you partake of all the party foods. It's
Mhm.
like I think when you go to a party and if you don't have specific health issues, that's not, if it's something that your body can get over, you need to weigh that, how bad is this for this moment. Like I would recommend, if people say, well, I couldn't possibly eat plant-based because we've got the holidays, and every holiday, we have a feast. And I'm thinking, okay, so go to the holiday, enjoy your feast. That's
Yeah.
one meal.
Yeah.
The only struggle is for people like me, I tend to then take days or weeks to straighten myself back out, because once I've had that, it triggers all kinds of, memories of, oh, this was so good. And eating this food reminds me of all the past years when we had these traditional things. And my body all of a sudden goes, oh, I remember that dopamine hit. Give me more, give me more.
Mhm.
And, especially if it's the treats and like, all the cakes and candies and pies and whatever. Yeah. Then so for me, not everybody's like this, but for me, when I do have that holiday meal, I know I'm actually opening the door to a struggle to pull
Mhm.
myself back out of that. How long is it going to take me to get back on track? But if I can remember that, like even if I go ahead and have whatever I want at that meal, if I can remember that it's not a guilt thing, if I,
Yeah.
say it takes me, I don't know, say it takes me a month to get back on track, that I'm just constantly battling myself, or the opposite, saying, oh, what the heck, I already had that meal, I might as well just keep having all these other things,
Mhm.
until I finally realize I don't want to feel like this. This feels awful in my body. And then I finally get back on track again. If I can not carry any guilt about that and just look at it as a detour, just a scenic route. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I did that. And I can see that there were benefits. It was fun. It was fun to
Yeah.
eat whatever junky foods that everybody else was eating. And okay. And an occasion is fine for that, as long as it doesn't cause some acute, illness,
Yeah.
from
Flare
it.
up.
Yeah. There are some types of things, some gluten intolerances or some sugar things, like you mentioned earlier, that you will have a flare up and pay the price for that. And so, and it does start a roller coaster of wanting more,
Yep.
and so you don't want to do that, like as a lifestyle where you're just constantly on and off, because it's just taxing. But it's your choice, it's your body. If
Yeah.
you want to do that and be on the roller coaster, go for it. But if you
Yeah.
want to feel better, it's probably not a good idea.
Right. I really like that you point out, like, this isn't a shame-based thing. This is meet where you're at. And I think that was one of the things that prevented me from doing when you said, hey, why don't we just monitor what the 3-year-old is eating? And I was like, he's basically eating nothing of value. Like, I don't want to share that with you. That's like, oh my gosh, I'm disgraced at myself that I feed my kid this stuff. Like, I know better. I just don't do better. And so that in itself was that feeling of, okay, if I'm feeling this way, like I had to go deeper and do some work and be like, well, if I'm feeling this way, that I'm embarrassed that somebody might watch what I'm feeding him, that's a sure tell sign that maybe I do need to change some things. And this is a safe way to do it, because your response was, we're just going to do better than we were the day before. Right. And I'm going to offer you options and choices. It doesn't mean you have to do them. It just means they're available for if you decide. And I was like, coming up with all these reasons. Well, I can't get to the grocery store. And well, like that's going to take too much time for me to be able to like plan that out. And my brain was like literally like, hold on for dear life. Don't change anything. This is safe. And so, like, my therapist side of me understood that. They understood that anytime there's a change, there's that resistance that comes in to keep you safe. You're triggered. And so it was neat that when that happened, I knew what it was. And you had given me those options. You didn't give me a timeline on when I had to start them. You just were like, if you ever want to look at them, here they are. And if you don't make any changes, like nobody said you had to. I'm not here with like a pistol whipping saying, like, hey, I expected this to happen, or I'm going to just stop giving you options because clearly you're not listening to me. Like, there was none of those things. And we were a family that were eating out a ton. We were like, my 3-year-old, he would nibble 2 bites of something and then, like, I want that instead. And so those were like two of my big obstacles. I'm fearful of being judged. I am fearful, like, I know I should do better. I am fearful of like my brain's trying to keep me safe. But I'm also like have this piece around like how do we track 2 nibbles? Like, do I just put into the little app, he ate 2 nibbles? But you encouraged me, like, go ahead and look at the app, like download it. And you, when you made this suggestion of like just download the app, I was like, this is going to be dumb, but whatever. And so I downloaded the app. In my head, my brain was already tricking me into being like, this is irrelevant, you don't need to do this. And so when I downloaded it, it was more from a place of it's not going to work versus a place of this is going to be exactly the solution I'm looking for. And it's interesting how resistant I was, but yet because of the medical needs my kiddo had, I followed along and it came through, and it has had like the biggest blessing ever because we got our time back. The kids can have relationships with each other. We can leave the house. Like, we weren't able to leave the house because his behavior was so unsafe. But we had 2 doctors that recommended we just medicate him, and he's 3. Like, and I'm a children's mental health provider. Like, I'm a therapist for children's mental health. And so I knew there was something very wrong. And that's why I took him to the doctors, right? And so part of the piece and downloading that app and then entering, like, I was amazed at the capabilities of the app. Like, it's so easy. Like, which was what you said, Natalie. It's like, it's there. Just take a look at it. Even if you just took pictures, because I know time's an issue, just take pictures of the food he eats. I'm like, well, that I could do. Like, I could do that, but I don't know if I could enter it into an app, but I could take pictures. So that's where I started, which was like, your suggestions were so helpful. Like, if the bar felt too high, you were like, just take a picture of it. And I'm like, okay. So I took the pictures, and like through the day, I was like, oh, and it time stamped them, which was really cool. And I could see like he is eating these little nibbles of things. And you taught me how to track that. Like, it's not a whole apple, but it was like 0.25 or
Yeah.
a 0.14, right? Like, it was such a tiny nibble. And I'm like, then my next thought was, well, this is ridiculous. They're not even, how can we track 2 bites of anything over like a week? Because he's really not eating anything. So what are you going to see? Him not eating anything? And then I'm going to be a bad mom because I'm not actually feeding him and he's not eating anything, right? So I had these things, which I knew were my things and my resistance and my brain trying to keep me safe. But it did track, and we did see his nutritional values. And you were able to say, this is going to cause a spike. I wonder if we could do this, or I wonder if we could get him to drink this, or like make recommendations along the way. So what was your experience like when, like, you heard my experience, what was it like for you on your side in tracking that?
In tracking yours for your son?
Yeah.
Um, it was really neat to see how much nutrition he was getting, which was great. I think that is the baseline of no guilt. Number one is super important. The second layer is to understand that you are getting nutrition, even if you're eating standard American diet or,
Mhm.
candy all the time. You're getting some things, so let's take a look at what you're doing well, what needs are being met so that you feel really good about that. Let's own that because you are doing it. And if the child is eating, even something that has just a little bit of goodness into it, it's something, and their body's getting something out of it. And it's minimal, it's getting calories. It's getting some type of energy.
Mhm.
So if we can start with something positive like that, then you can just keep up leveling that in comfortable ways, in playful ways.
Mhm.
So when I'm looking at, at the daily nutrition, and it's fun for me to see, because I can look at it and know pretty quickly, like, oh, okay, so the nutritional bars, it's more than just your 3 macronutrients of
Mhm.
carbohydrate, fat, and protein. It's like, what's the other one?
Mhm.
There are a whole bunch of things that you get from your foods that you can track, and it's just so much fun to see, okay, here's where we're doing really good. Let's see if we can, like a video game or something, like or just any type of game where you see, okay, how much more can we get now? What could I do that's easy that would just upgrade this a little bit? For
Right.
instance, if you're going to have a bowl of rice or something, and like, what could I do to that? If I add some butter here, you look at the nutritional information and you realize, okay, well, it's adding oil. It's got no extra nutritional value. It's just more calories. What else could I add to that rice instead of butter? Let's see, if I do, and go through the different things and come up with, well, what is the tastiest, but I want it to be like this, or I want it to have, I want it to be a Mexican flavor, or I want it to be an Asian flavor, or, or I want it to be just really soft and neutral, or whatever you want. Like, what can we do
Yeah.
with seasonings to make it,
Yeah.
just the way you love? And then if you're thinking, okay, what I want some kind of a protein, so to speak, with it. Well, rice has protein, especially if it's got the bran. So if it's brown rice, it's going to have more of the protein. And what can you add to that? You can add beans. There are so many different types.
Mhm.
Add chickpeas. There are little bits of your nut butter can be added to that. But again, when you're adding the oils, you do have to make sure that it's not going to cause a big, spike in your blood sugar level, because of
Mhm.
having the oil and the carbohydrates in your bloodstream at the same time. So if you're going to have some of that with it, just check with yourself, like, okay, is the sugar high for a while until my body is able to deal with all this? Is that okay for me? Am
Yeah.
I struggling with that right now? So someone who's going through pre-diabetes or has diabetes, it's just better not to. Just if you're going to have any oils, or not oils, we don't want oils, no oils at all, except for maybe a couple of drops of sesame oil when you're making
Mm.
an Asian dish that just really calls for that.
Yeah.
It's just, there really isn't a substitute for that
Mhm.
flavor. But that's a once in a while thing where you're just like, well, I really wanted to have that authentic flavor.
Yeah.
But that's nothing. That's such a tiny little bit once in a while.
Yeah.
So there are just so many fun things when I'm looking at someone's, nutritional choices, and it becomes a game. When I first learned to do that, I was back in college taking a nutrition class and physiology class, actually. And one of the things that we did was we had to do 3 days of a 2,000 calorie diet, eating healthy foods. And
Mhm.
so we all played around with that and found it was quite challenging, because of,
Mhm.
at the time, I was used to the standard American diet and I didn't know any different. So I was kind of putting in normal meals and going, okay, well, I can, fill that up really quickly with, calories for that. But then you take away the things that aren't so good for you that you kind of know. I start taking those things away. And all of a sudden, when it's whole foods, it's like, wow, you have to eat a lot, you know, especially if it's plant-based, then we started looking at, how much nutrition can you get for your food? So then it becomes about nutrition density. Say you have a
That's
cup of
right.
food, say you have a cup of food and that's the only food you're going to get for a day. Okay. Wow. That's tiny. If that's literally all you can get, you have to play with that. Like, okay, I need this to be so nutrient dense that it meets all my body's needs. And it would need to be calorie dense. You need to have a lot of calories because it's only this one little cup. But your body also needs fiber so that it's going to have a nice, even pace. What am I going to do? That is a challenge because, when you have a tiny, like a child, tiny little stomach, and you need a lot of different nutrients, that little amount of food that they're going to eat becomes very important. So you want to
Very.
aim for nutrient density. So what foods have nutrition, vitamins and phytonutrients, so that cup goes a long ways. But ideally, then if you are still hungry after that cup and you've met most of your needs, then adding the bulk of food with whole food plant-based, it can be a lot of food. Actually, you can eat a lot of food and keep the calories low.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is that you've got the right amount of calories for your body, for your size. A little child is going to have a different amount than a teen, but the percentage
and I do
matter. Go ahead.
I do find that is difficult. And so I went from tracking the 3-year-old to tracking myself. And I was at my weight that I wanted to be. And then as I started role modeling for the 3-year-old, I quickly realized I am dropping weight that I don't want to be dropping. And I want to stay at this weight. And so I started tracking, like, my calories need to stay up and I need to, like, not keep dropping. I need to add some of those fats, like the avocado and the seeds that you're talking about. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, like every day I felt like I was losing a half a pound here and a half there. And by the end of the week, I'm like, how am I losing so fast? Um, and I realized I wasn't hitting my calorie mark. I wasn't hungry, but I also wasn't hitting my calorie mark. And so then I did start looking at, well, what are those nutrient dense and high that I could get that cup that you talked about. And it's looking at it, like playing with it and watching. It's neat to watch and put in different foods and be like, wow, that's bang for buck right there. Like I want to eat all those grapes. Those grapes, like the fiber in them and like the calorie count goes like whoop, like it jumps up really nicely when I do that. And yeah, so there are some things, and then there's some other things where you're like, that doesn't count for them very much. Like I won't eat that because, like, while it's yummy and it's still in line with what my goals are, just isn't gonna really add a whole ton of calories for me. um and I would say too, I've never been on the new way of eating and been like, wow, I am hungry, what is there to eat? There's so totally nothing to eat. For me, there was so many exciting new recipes to try that I got excited and wanted to try and test out all these things, and with still the mindset of like, how close is it going to be to the food that I was eating? And so I'm always a bit of a pessimist, like, oh, this isn't going to be the same and I'm not going to like it. And this is a reason why I should not be doing this. What am I thinking? So I'm a bit of that mindset already. And I think it's probably, again, that brain, go back to what you know, go back to what you know something else. And so when I started doing some of these recipes, I found that there are substitutes for meat. We were a family that did a lot of ground beef. So we're rural, we raise a cow. My husband's parents do, and they butcher and off they go with their ground beef. And so we have a freezer full of grass-fed ground beef, and like that was always like so good. Kudos to me for eating like where we know. But I learned different ways. I wanted to enhance some things, and I decided, you know what? We actually want to go with an alternative to beef. But what is there that I can still make tacos, still make a lasagna, still have the spaghetti and like all the yummy meat on top? And I'm like, what? There isn't anything. And so there was a while where I kind of played with that and really missed some of those dishes. But then I realized like you have to kind of find what you enjoy, what you are like what tastes similar to you. So for us, we found like a texturized veggie protein was very similar. We could cook it up the same way. We actually save time because we don't have to defrost any meat. We can just take it out of the package, add your water or seasoning or whatever it's dehydrated. So you want to hydrate it back and then add that in and cook it like we would ground beef, whether it's adding the sauces, adding the tomatoes, whether it's like frying it up with seasonings. It's the same thing that you want to just put that water in so it sizzles and still gets the browning. It's just so cool to know, brain, you're not missing out, you're having the same. And when I would eat it, when it was a meat, a beef, I would get these like gristly hunks every once in a while and I'd be like, oh, it's so annoying, we got bad beef. And so this with veggie mix, we don't end up with hunks of things where you're like, what was that? And so I remember eating my taco thinking, I can relax. I guess I hadn't realized how tense I was when I was eating because I would always, is this going to be a bite that I'm going to have something like in there that it's going to like be extra different than the texture it should be? And so when I ate my first like texturized veggie protein, it was so different, and I could feel myself relax and being like, I don't have to worry about that. There's not, it's going to be consistent through all of this meal, and I don't have to worry about, well, that was a hard gristly lump. So yeah, I think the key is um overriding some of the brains, giving it new things, new experiences, so that it's not, oh, you're going to be unsafe. You're going to be unsafe. You're going to be safe. Set off the alarms. You're unsafe. Um, so that has been super helpful in transitioning some of this stuff.
Amazing. So what goes on in my head when I hear you talk about that is that it's a gigantic step in the direction of nutrition and away from things that are causing challenges for the body.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not having animal protein. And one of the important reasons for that is you're reducing the risk of cancer later in life, even by not having that a normal part of your diet. So you're moving away from things that are causing challenges and into things that are, going to be used up right now, that are good for you. But it also goes right into my good, better, best. So yes. I would look at the TVP, the textured vegetable protein, as better.
Mm-hmm.
So, eating your meat, good. You're eating food. Eating the textured vegetable protein instead of meat, amazing. That would be better, far better. On a scale of better, it's like a giant mountain, it's halfway up the mountain. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. And another thing to play with is once in a while, try substituting for that into truly whole food options. So that would be, I know of a cauliflower taco meat recipe made from cauliflower that is amazing. So I'll have to give you that recipe. It's so good. And so I use cauliflower for like cauliflower wings, with like barbecue sauce coating, and it's amazing. So cauliflower is a great substitute for that texture. All kinds of beans are a great substitute. So there are ways to use that, and that way you're getting like a whole food fiber. You're not getting an extreme amount of isolated proteins. You're getting the whole package. So your body really knows how to handle that so much better. And that will be better on your digestion. Now, when people are transitioning to more beans, they tend to be concerned about their digestion
Mhm.
gas, things like that. So there are ways to make it less gassy for your
Okay.
body. But one of the problems that's happening is that all that fiber is starting to move some stuff in your digestive tract.
Yeah.
There's it's a long digestive tract that we have, and things can build up in there.
Yes.
And to be able to get things moving with the fiber, and say we're having a lot of fruit and staying hydrated, it's going to get things moving and cleared out. And that in itself, during the transition, it's going to be gassy. And you're
Mhm.
gonna have to just go, oh well, just
Yeah.
this is part of clearing things out. So as a mom,
Absolutely.
that with your little ones, like, oh yeah, my little one right now is going through some gassiness. What did we, kind of track back what that was from, you know,
Yeah.
you can, you're always paying attention to the bathroom related things with the tiny ones, and, diapers and whatnot, seeing like, oh yeah, that's because, he or she had this or that,
Mhm.
so there's that clearing time. But later on, your body does handle the beans so much better. It becomes much less of an issue. Your body adjusts. And by that time, your gut bacteria have gotten
Uh,
healthy. That's a whole other thing, is
yes.
the amazing gut bacteria that is symbiotic
Absolutely.
with us. We need the good bacteria. It's helping
Yeah.
us, but we don't want to grow the bad bacteria. And
Right.
we just feed it the processed food, and and the sugar. We're going to get the more of the unhealthy gut bacteria that's going to cause problems in
Mhm.
our body, and it's going to crave more of it.
Yes.
That is actually going to send a message that, okay, more of this.
Mhm.
So that
I
is
think
a big deal.
that's huge.
Yeah, you want to grow
Yeah,
that
that
good
is
gut bacteria.
huge. And yeah, I think one of the things that keeps me on track is knowing that I've done X amount, and I don't really track. Like I just kind of live my life. This is our new lifestyle. This is, the we just do this. Like it doesn't click for me anymore. And it's really been a short time. Like 3 months is really not a long time.
It's
And
not, it's
so
so fast. It's a typical summer.
yeah,
Yeah.
it has gone super fast.
I mean, literally,
And
it's one
so I always
season, one little season is all it takes.
right. And then when you notice the changes in your body, you enjoy them and you do dabble, like whether it's, it's Christmas meal or Thanksgiving meal, you do get it's inevitable something at some point. And then it's a reminder of like, oh, right. I used to feel like this all the time. And I could choose to still, if I want to, like that we have that free will thing that we
Yes.
have, but I choose not to want to do that. And I feel like, yeah, I do put in the prep work ahead of time. So I have those convenient little spots that I can take snacks out and go. Um, but yet what keeps me on track or get back on track is that bacteria, the visual. I'm super visual. And so like, okay, I've done this chunk of time and I've like ate, what I've wanted to and kind of stayed on track or what I deem to be on track. And then I'll slip up and eat a meal out or do whatever. And it's not even really a slip. It's just like, okay, it's worthwhile. This weighing out the pros and cons, I've deemed this is going to be fine. And then I'm like, afterwards, I still like you will say, okay, it's okay because you had this. And so we'll wait a while until we get back on track. Or it's okay. I'll just do this one more time. And like that brain piece, right? It's so powerful. And then the visual comes in of like this bacteria that grew so beautifully and it started to blossom. And it's like a tree. It started to grow leaves and it started to get like buds for flowers. And then it came in with like this freezing storm and froze everything. And I'm like, no, they're gonna open and blossom. Like I had such a beautiful like set thing that was gonna, do this stuff. And then I killed it off. And and when I'm eating different things, I'm literally like, you're killing your good bacteria. You're killing your good bacteria. You're killing your good bacteria. The stuff that you work so hard to like get thriving and growing. And so, but that is totally just me. And it's not that I feel guilt or shame about it. It's more, I want to do better. I want to just grow it. They're so beneficial. And so I think it's more that I'm more mindful. Same with the soda and drinking pop. I used to just go, we always had pop in the fridge. I would go, I would drink it. It's just like water for us. Like it was no big deal. And the dentist sure noticed and made mention to me about my kids' teeth. And I was like, whatever, everybody does it. It's not a big deal. My brain again, right? And so then when I started to change and drink more water, I was like, well, the kids aren't going to drink water, but they can drink juice. And again, you did your it's better and gave options. And what I was finding was my kids went from drinking soda all the time at free will whenever it was accessible to them to then drinking juice. We didn't realize how much dye was in that juice. Like it's yellow and it says it's natural and it's organic, but then they dyed it yellow. And you're like, oh, their pineapple juice was dyed yellow. That's not what I want. And so then I like got different juice that was organic sugar cane sweetened. And that was still better than the dyed and the soda. And now he has a thermos of cold water and he just takes it around with him everywhere. And so it's interesting to see the progression. And that was like your recommendation, like he's still drinking because I would send you pictures of different things he was doing. And you're like, I wonder if we could get more water somehow. And I'm like, no, it's not possible. And again, it's like my brain in a pessimistic piece, right? And then I'm realizing back to that the reason he's doing what he's doing is because I'm not making it accessible to him. And so I was like, oh, right. So if he had a thermos of water and he could take the lid off and fill it himself, which he loves having the autonomy and independence. And he'll even come, it's too tight, will you take it off? And I'll take it off and I'll give it to him. And he'll just take it everywhere and drink his water. And it's not a big deal. It was a big deal in my head. But when we moved to it, it was not a big deal.
Yeah, I
Which is so
remember
cool.
with that. I remember it's like, okay, well, how can we offer the whole fruit next to
Mhm.
the water, you know, as opposed to say a healthy lemonade, it's still got a lot of sugar. You know, any juice is going to have a lot of sugar, any fruit juice. And kids aren't going to drink a non-fruity juice. They're not going to have straight wheatgrass juice or something like that. That's not going to happen. But, juices that they want are going to be, apple juice or lemonade or something. It's very high in sugar. So you are starting right off the bat, shooting the level of sugar in your bloodstream.
Right? Yeah. So overall, like it has been super helpful to walk the journey, transition at my pace with recipes and suggestions that tidbits of information that you've been like, hey, and I still learn stuff all the time when we get to chatting about foods and experiences. And it's such a wealth of like, I just want to soak it all in. It's so cool. Um, and I wanted that for other people so that they could see and feel and experience and have some of your greatness. And so, what are you offering and how are you going to help others?
Well, let's see. I can definitely meet with you and look at what your nutrition is for a day or a few days and
Mhm.
help you see the nutrition you are getting in all the different nutrients, and like selenium, for instance, like who knows how much selenium you're getting, like let's take a look at and see all the nutrients that you're getting and keep the things that are working and suggest things that could be better.
Mhm.
As you move up that mountain of good, better, best, what is going to get you more nutrition? And so I can review some days of, your nutritional tracking. And
Mm.
most people resist that because it is difficult to write that all down. So I try and come up with ways like you mentioned, taking a photo of each of the meals, and then later on see if we can now translate that into, a nutritional diary and say, okay, well, it's about this, and you can guesstimate pretty well and start to see where the holes are. Like, oh wow, we're missing, like, there are basically no vitamins going on today. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess, how could we get that up? And I guess there was nothing green on the plate. How can I sneak that in? I'm all about making it as palatable as possible, and if possible, increase the seasonings and increase the things that make it amazing,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
the textures that feel really good. And there are substitutes. So we play with all those things and see if we can fill up all the bars to get as close to 100% of all the nutrition possible in the most fun, easy way. So I can help with that. And I use that for meal planning, because basically we're looking at this not as, oh, you did good or you didn't do good. It's not that at all. It is,
Mhm.
we're looking at, okay, here's just information. Okay, here's what we were able to do today. And just like a game, what can we plan tomorrow? What kinds of things can I lean towards as I'm making meals in the next week that would boost that? And if you know what foods are going to give you that certain nutrition, or some of the foods are major bang for the buck. And here are
Right.
two of them: bananas
Oh, yes.
and potatoes, particularly sweet potatoes. They're a little bit different, such as you can eat sweet potatoes raw. Not that you have to, but I'm just saying that's different than a regular potato. Regular, like a russet potato, do
Yep.
not eat that raw. So it's not okay for your body. But the sweet potato, you can grate that up onto a salad. There are things that you can do with sweet potatoes raw, which I think is fun to know.
Yes.
So,
So cool.
but I love, cooked sweet potatoes, and there are ways to make fries and all that kind of stuff. And you can do regular potatoes, just keep the fats really low and make them whole food fats. So nuts, seeds, avocado, as opposed to the oil of those things.
Right.
If you want olive oil, just chop up an olive into little bits and sprinkle that on, and that'll give you that flavor plus the fiber in a whole food form.
Oh,
Your body will
cool.
know how to deal with that. So it's just fun I really enjoy being able to come up with the substitutes, because I feel like we're getting a deal, like, okay, I could have this food, but all I have to do to make it amazing is this. Like, I have this
Mhm.
recipe for a raw apple pie,
Oh,
and
cool.
made of completely whole foods. It's got blended dates and that kind of thing. But you put the two pies next to each other, a typical cooked apple pie versus the raw apple pie, and the nutritional value is off the charts amazing with the raw one, and it's very, very, very low with the cooked
Of
one.
course.
And it's laden with oils, just so many things from the crust on up, just,
Right.
and then the sprinkle on top of, whatever Dutch sugary thing on top. It's like they both are equally amazing and sweet and delicious,
Mhm.
and have a similar texture. And because you actually have to kind of marinate the apples in the raw one to make it softer. So there
Mhm.
are ways to mimic things so that you get apple pie, but you get the nutrition and you feel good after you eat. So
Yeah.
another is like, after I eat, what kind of energy do I have after? Am I bouncing off the walls, or am I like, just feel like good? Like, oh, I want to do fun things. I have the energy, feel good.
Exactly.
Let's do, okay, I ate, like the typical, after a giant meal, say a big feast of a standard American diet, you undo the belt and you just want to curl up and go to sleep because your body has to recover. It's got
Absolutely.
to digest all that and deal with it. You shouldn't have to deal with your food. Your food is to
No.
support you,
Right.
right? And
So
so it's a choice though, and it's not something to be shamed about, but it's something to go, gosh, I could actually feel better after this. Do I want that? And if
right.
you want that, there are ways. It's just nice to know you have the choice.
I think that it's just sometimes lack of knowledge. It's like they didn't know that this amazing pie over here is obtainable. Like they just don't have like the tools accessible. And I think that's where your place it comes in, is like giving like a grocery list, giving different foods and recipes, looking at the nutritional values that and intake that's already happening, and looking for, okay, well, what do you eat right now? And what, like whether it's Caribbean cuisine or if it's like Italian cuisine, like what type of recipes for your menu, so that it is not such a massive stretch, because we already know people's brains are going to go stay with safety, stay with safety, stay with safety, and resist even when they have proof in their bodies or proof wherever, or they just want maybe a doctor's asked them for change. But for whatever reason, you're going to want to resist some of that change. And so it sounds like what you're offering is some days in chronometer to do your monitoring. Like, what are you? Let's look for baseline. What are you getting right now? Then some suggestions on, hey, this is, good, better, best. And these are your choices that are available to you. So you have your menu revamp options. You have your stuff that's similar to what people are already eating, but enhancing that and substituting things in and out, so that you can add like those bars that you're monitoring the nutritional values are going to get to that full nutritional dense capacity. And so that sounds like an amazing value, right? Like you are meeting with somebody to go over their goals, to go over what they're already eating, to you're suggesting, hey, let's monitor. And then giving them options with a list to be able to be like, hey, you might not have ever heard of millet, but millet is blah, 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 blah. You might not know that when you add avocado, you might want to add some lemon to counteract the like harsh green taste. Like those are all things I learned from you. And so again, I just think having your greatness alongside with somebody that can also experience like what I had, whether it's for their kids, whether it's for longevity of themselves or their health, for whatever reasons, there's so many different options that you are, here's my offer. This is about you. This is about them, right? So, how do people get in contact with you?
At Lynda@lightnessquest.com is my email. So you can email me directly. And if you would like to reach me on Facebook, let's see, what would be the best place to go to? My name is Lynda Marie Roy. So you could search that.
Okay.
So let's see, lightnessquest.com is my website, and you can find my contact through there. So lightnessquest.com. And yeah, I would love to be able to help people to get started on switching their diet and to step away from any guilt or shame related to what we're eating right now. It's just food, and you get to, it's free will, and there is no need to feel shame about it. Inside, you might have those thoughts, and let's make that okay. If I'm embarrassed to write down and show someone what I'm eating or what I'm serving my child, that in itself needs some love.
Mhm. Yeah.
because we get to feel shame.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel shame, and yet we don't have to. It's I'm like trying to say that even the shame, I don't want you to shame your shamer. So you feel,
Yeah.
it's like, it's just embarrassing. Okay, well, let's just look at that for a moment, because you need love and you need to make it okay to feel whatever comes up. And so
Absolutely.
that's where working with you, Natalie, is like, is amazing, getting to really deal with all the energies that are coming up. So
Mhm.
it's complicated when we make a change for health. Right
Mhm.
away, we're going to say, well, this doesn't feel good right off the bat. For instance, if the first time you go to a gym or start a workout plan, there's this
Mhm.
moment of awakening where you go, this, the first few times, I don't belong here. I shouldn't be doing this. There's all kinds of resistance, but there's also like, I should have been doing this for years and I'm just now starting. I'm embarrassed about that.
Mhm.
Like, I don't belong at the gym, or I'm awkward, out there doing my, whatever fitness thing I'm doing. And that transition needs a lot of love and care, and to step out of any kind of guilt or shame about not having done it before. You are here right now. All of life is happening right here and now. So here we are. What would you like to do from this perfectly good spot that we're in?
Yeah.
How?
And I think that that goes right into your upcoming January stuff, which is your lightness quest, right? Like it goes into, okay, well,
I'm going to be doing a course. Yeah. So I need some beta testers for that. And I'm excited to take people through a full holistic process of changing not just their diet, but how they think about their eating, how they choose foods based on emotional situations, like the
Mhm.
typical thing when you see in movies where somebody breaks up with you and now you're in the refrigerator. You open the freezer and get your ice cream out and just eat a whole quart. You're sad, and that's just typical normal behavior to eat to soothe yourself. So can we upgrade what we're soothing ourselves with first?
Yeah.
What if there's something that is super soothing, like say the banana and ice cream comes in mind right there, something that has that intensity for you. and,
Yeah.
and then or if you're going to binge on the thing that you normally did before, can we right after that say, okay, clearly there was a non-food issue. The
Mhm.
food is not going to solve it. It will blind it for a moment. But I could look at that in a guiltless way and say, that was my first aid.
Mhm.
I
Absolutely.
put a compress on that. I wasn't ready to deal with all those feelings coming up yet.
Mhm.
Just be aware of that.
For
That's
sure.
all you really need to do. You don't need to shame yourself for it. Just go, okay, and how do I feel now? And
Mhm.
do I want to do something different?
Mhm.
Maybe I don't. And that's always okay. So just an entire program where we're dealing with more than food. We're dealing with why we eat. We're dealing with and then that carries off into all the other parts of life. Just being able to enjoy every day, no matter the circumstances and the trials and tribulations, what's going on in the family, work, the world, the world stage, all the things that happen. How are we processing that energy?
Yeah.
What are we thinking about it? How are we resisting and causing ourselves added suffering? So I'm all
Mhm.
about getting rid of guilt, shame, and unnecessary suffering in every possible way so that you're lighter in mind,
Yes.
body, and spirit.
And the relationships start to come together in a different way. because your mind and the work that you've done and how things change and how you respond to things are different, and how people respond to you will be different. It's all, like you said, holistic. And so I am super excited for you to have beta testers to go through the program. And so yeah, I hope that people are able to connect with you, able to get the value that like I got from it, and able just to follow through into the beta program so that they can continue to get the like really good, juicy wealth of stuff that I know you bring to the table. So thank you so much for all that you do, and for, joining me with this and being able to present what you present for people.
Thank you so
Mhm.
much, Natalie. I love working with you. And yeah, I look forward to helping your friends and anyone that would like to feel better.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.